83-year-old Harvey Marcelin, who identifies as a transgender woman, is suspected of murdering and dismembering the victim. She has already been charged with concealing a body. Police say it happened here at Marcelin's apartment in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn. Investigators found a human head in her apartment.
Today we are talking about Harvey Marcelin, aka Marcelin Harvey. Born May 21st, 1938, Harvey now identifies as trans. Harvey is an octogenarian transgender serial killer. You heard that right. Hailing from Brooklyn, New York, Harvey acquired the title serial killer when he killed and dismembered his third victim, Susan Leyden. Let's start with Marcelin's history before we get into the crimes. Marcelin grew up in a single-parent household. Her father died when she was 10 years old. Growing up in Harlem, New York, during her early childhood, she then moved to 158th Street in Washington Heights, New York. Harvey traces her trauma to a daycare center at St. Aloysius Catholic Church on 132nd Street in Harlem. Her mother sent her there so that she could work as a seamstress. Marcelin, in a 55-minute jailhouse interview, told a New York Post reporter that she would beg her mother not to send her there, but she had no other options for his care, being that she was a single mother. Harvey claims that the nuns of the church whipped and abused her sexually, also gave her bad food. There's something about Marcelin and food that's going to come up later. Marcelin believes that's where she flipped. Marcelin has suffered from mental illness majority of her life, and a lot of issues stem from when she was a child. Marcelin claims that she would dress up in women's clothing occasionally in her youth. She tells reporters that on Halloween when she was 14, she dressed up as a woman, and that the Catholic Charities from St. Aloysius Church had her treated and seen by psychiatrists. She was examined by psychiatrists for truancy, which is being late to class, theft, hetero and homosexual activity, and cross-dressing. So back when Marcelin was young, because she was born in 1938, cross-dressing was seen as a problem. It's not so much of an issue now, but back then it was a huge deal. But the worst of it all was when Harvey was accused of the attempted rape of an 8-year-old girl. Harvey would go on to be accused of rape and sexual assault many more times. But take note of this event because it's going to give you an idea of the kind of person that we're dealing with here. Harvey hasn't worked very much over the years, and the only job that we know that he's had was a machine operator when he was 14. There's no other evidence of work. But then again, Marcelin has been in jail for over 50 years, and we'll get into that momentarily. Now let's get into the crimes. Marcelin's crime spree spans from 1963 to 2022. Harvey has been arrested several times and has spent over 50 years off and on in jail. Marcelin is now 83 and is sitting in jail for capital murder. In September 1957, Harvey was arrested for felony assault. In March of 1963, she was arrested for the rape of a 24-year-old woman. This woman has a connection to Harvey's first murder victim. I'll discuss this connection momentarily. I know I keep saying that a lot, but it's worth it. Just listen and I'll get to it. On April 18, 1963, Harvey murdered her ex-girlfriend Jacqueline Bonds with a .38 caliber revolver inside of the 8th Avenue Harlem apartment. Before killing Jacqueline Bonds, Harvey was accused of raping her and another woman. Harvey frequently drank, used cocaine, and assaulted Bonds. On the day Harvey murdered Bonds, he entered the apartment and shot her twice. He then chased a staggering Bonds into the bedroom and shot her again. She then staggered into the living room where she died. This bastard was so brutal and cruel that it's just absolutely sickening. Harvey killed Bonds in retaliation for Bonds breaking up with her. 6 weeks prior to the murder, Bonds and her mother confronted Harvey about his treatment of Bonds. She broke up with her mother present. Harvey then pointed a finger at Bonds and threatened her, saying, "I'll get you." And this is what Bond's mother testified at the murder trial. Harvey said that she'll get her, and she did. Here's something interesting. Bonds was supposed to testify before a grand jury in Marcelin's rape case, the one of the 24-year-old woman. But Harvey shot her the day before. Bond's testimony would have bolstered Harvey's alibi in this rape. However, the rape case was dropped after Bonds died. Marcelin was convicted of murder and served 20 years in prison. She was released in 1984 on lifetime parole. The crime spree does not end there, unfortunately. Marcelin does suffer from mental health issues. On April 9, 1962, Marcelin voluntarily checked herself into Bellevue. She was discharged into the custody of her wife on April 16th, 1 week after her hospitalization. She was married to Florence Jackson at the time. There are no divorce records, and no one can locate Miss Jackson. Marcelin was diagnosed as a schizoid person with poor impulse control, meaning that she suffered from schizophrenia. The examining psychiatrist found Marcelin did well with medication and not considered psychotic. Really? Dr. George Hamilton Welk testified that a possibility of insanity can be entertained, but felt that she was not mentally incompetent to stand trial. So while she does have mental illness, she knows what she's doing, pretty much. Dr. Welk also believes that Marcelin suffers from delusions of grandiosity, meaning thinking that she's bigger than what she is, and it's almost like narcissism. And also suggests that schizophrenia and paranoid reaction personality may be in play as well. Marcelin agrees and stated in a jailhouse interview, the same 55-minute one, that her mental is okay, but it's her emotional. Marcelin's atrocious crime spree continues. In October 1985, less than 1 year after being released from prison, Marcelin murdered her girlfriend, another one, 29-year-old Ana Laura Sierra Miranda. He stabbed her to death and then dismembered her body. Marcelin stabbed Ana 30 times. Harvey said that that was an exaggeration and that some of Anna's wounds were inflicted by birds and animals. And that is because Harvey left Anna's body in Central Park. He cut her up, bagged up her remains, and left her in the park to rot like she was nothing but trash. Harvey left Anna's remains at the entrance of Central Park at the 106th Street entrance. On October 30th, 1985, Roberto Romano witnessed Marcelin transporting the body from room 602 at the Cambridge Resident Inn in Harlem, where Harvey was residing. Roberto was in the lobby smoking reefer, that's what they did back then, when Harvey passed by him pushing a shopping cart that held a plastic bag in it. The bag ripped on the first step and blood came out. Sounds like something from a horror movie. This reminds me of a series of videos I did about Anthony Eugene Robinson, aka the shopping cart killer. Robinson utilized a shopping cart during his crimes. Unlike Harvey, Robinson doesn't have a criminal record. No prior arrest to becoming a serial killer, which is odd. Check those videos out if you're curious. But back to Marcelin. Harvey walked past this man with Anna's body concealed in that shopping cart and dropped it off at the entrance of Central Park. A man walking by found the bag, and when he opened it, he found a woman's bound legs. Like, can you imagine just walking by and you find that? Marcelin told police that Anna was a heroin addict and that he killed her because she was late on the rent and sold his flute for drug money. He was incredibly jealous of the women that she was with. She hated the idea of anyone else having them. Anna had been arrested for prostitution many times, and Marcelin claims that she would bring her tricks home, which incited his jealousy and anger. During the investigation, police noticed a pattern. Anna frequented the same addresses regularly, and room 602 of the Cambridge Residence Hotel was one of them. Harvey struck a plea deal for manslaughter and was sentenced to 6 to 12 years in prison. She was released from Cayuga Correctional Facility in August of 2019, which is far longer than the 12 years. It's actually 35. She attempted to get parole 15 times before she was finally granted lifetime parole. At a state board parole hearing on August 21st, 1997, Harvey admitted to having problems with women. In a recent jailhouse interview, of course the same one, with the NY Post, Marcelin said that she had to suck ass to get parole, and she never thought that she'd be released, and she shouldn't have. Even this criminal knows that she shouldn't have been released. Harvey now identifies as transgender, so that's what I refer to her as, even though sometimes I switch up between he because the transgender identity is recent. Sorry to have it. I'm trying to respect this person's rights, but when you've committed the heinous crimes that this person did, I don't think they deserve rights. But okay, I know a lot of people are going to get mad at me for that, but that's okay. Harvey was placed in a women's homeless shelter in accordance with New York City Department of Social Services policy. This is important because Harvey's placement there put a lot of the inhabitants of the shelter and the staff in danger. And we'll get to that later. I'm sorry, but it all comes full circle because Harvey commits another murder. Harvey is very tall and opposing to many. This is how he was described by the women in the facility. My concern is a two-time murderer of women was placed in a shelter with senior women, and these are homeless people, and these are elderly women, which makes them more vulnerable to attack. I don't understand how someone can place a two-time convicted murderer of women with the people that this killer said that they have a problem with. It doesn't make sense.
Court records in 1962 show Marcelin was hospitalized and evaluated. Quote, the hospital record does contain the phrases delusional grandiosity, suggestions of chronic schizophrenia, and paranoid reaction personality.
This is a complicated case. This is an extraordinary case.
Professor Louis Schlesinger is with John Jay College of Criminal Justice. His expertise is deviant behavior, and he shared his opinion as to why someone who killed two people would be released from prison for a second time.
The major aspect of this case that I think is so unusual is his age. And I think it's probably because of this individual's age in his 80s that probably people in prison considered this non-threatening.
In March of 2019, Marcelin was arrested for the murder of another woman named Susan Leyden. Marcelin would be dubbed the octogenarian transgender killer due to her advanced age of 81 and her transgender identity. Marcelin started identifying as trans in 1993 at the Auburn State Prison when she met a trans inmate who encouraged her at the time to take Premarin hormone therapy and live as a trans woman. So Harvey was placed in the women's unit. Less than 3 years from being released from prison for murder of Anna, Marcelin killed 68-year-old Susan Leyden in her Brooklyn apartment. On February 27, 2022, Susan was seen on camera entering Marcelin's apartment. She was not seen leaving, and 3 days later, Marcelin is seen on video leaving the apartment carrying a bag with Susan's torso. So I'll get into the grueling details. I'll also issue a trigger warning. This information gets very graphic and disturbing. When Marcelin left her apartment on March 2nd, 2022, Leyden's torso was found in a shopping cart at the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Atlantic Avenue in the Cypress Hills section of New York, just outside of a construction safety gear shop next to a carpet store. A passerby noticed the bag and decided to open it. When he opened it, he found the body and called the police. The police found the body in the bag inside of a shopping cart as well. Again, like Anthony Eugene Robinson, the shopping cart killer. Check my video out if you're curious about it. The woman's head, arms, and legs were missing. Police were able to look at the surveillance cameras from local businesses and the streets. Those cameras capture Harvey leaving the body. This was on March 2nd, 3 days after Leyden was last seen entering Harvey's apartment building at 50 Pennsylvania Avenue. Harvey was also captured entering and leaving 50 Pennsylvania Avenue with that same shopping cart that Leyden's body was found in.
Discovered early this morning in East New York. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Stacey Sager.
I hate to say this, but nothing surprises me.
Not even this. Eyewitness News has now learned surveillance cameras on this block in East New York captured images of a man slowly pushing a shopping cart this morning here on Pennsylvania Avenue, only to discover that inside the large bag in the cart, which he thought was trash like this, turned out to be a woman's torso.
Police started investigating Susan's murder and Marcelin. What they found was truly sick. On March 1st, Harvey is seen on camera at Home Depot in Manhattan purchasing an electric saw, trash bags, and cleaning solutions. On March 2nd, Harvey was seen on camera from her home leaving the apartment on the 3rd floor, apartment 3D, dumping a multicolored bag containing Susan's torso at the crime scene. Again, the body was dumped on the street near Pennsylvania and Atlantic Avenue. The passerby found the bag 6 hours later. On March 4th, the police executed a search warrant and found Susan's head, the box of the saw that was purchased at Home Depot, bloody saw blades, and a bloody mop, a bathtub full of towels, and a pack of tarot cards left on the table. Marcelin asked for these tarot cards in prison and was denied. She asked for a lot of shit. The nerve of this bastard. There were also a lot of trash bags and blood spatter on the walls. The multicolored bag belonged to Susan. She brought it with her on the 27th of February. She was spotted on camera wearing the bag when she entered Harvey's apartment. Leyden was disposed of in the same bag. When they found the bag in the shopping cart, it was that same multicolored bag.
Police allegedly found the Brooklyn woman's torso bagged in a shopping cart on Atlantic and Pennsylvania Avenues.
Evidence include extensive video canvassing, interviews of witnesses, search warrants executed to gather items recovered.
Investigators say surveillance videos led them to Harvey Marcelin, a.k.a. Marceline Harvey, an 83-year-old trans woman and twice convicted killer who lives around the corner from where the torso was found. Police believe Harvey befriended Leyden 2 years ago via social media. Leyden was last seen alive walking into Harvey's apartment on February 27th.
On March 1st, our perpetrator, Miss Harvey, and another unknown female enter Home Depot in Manhattan. They purchase a Sawzall, trash bags, and cleaning solutions.
Marcelin was arrested on March 4th, 2022, and is being held without bail at Rikers Island. One of Leyden's legs was found in a trash can on Jamaica Avenue on March 7th, 3 days after Harvey was arrested. Days after the arrest, police released video of Marcelin at the 99-cent store in Queens, and she was sitting on a leg in her motorized scooter. On the video, we see Marcelin speaking to one of the employees of the store. Marcelin also stands up and walks away, and that is when you can see the severed leg in the seat. Bitch was sitting on the shit. Like, come the fuck on. One of Harvey's acquaintances was fooled by the wheelchair. John Gallagher, age 30, told reporters that Marcelin looked frail and oftentimes needed help. He couldn't believe it when he heard that Marcelin was killing again, but Marcelin managed to not only kill, but also not need help. Like, how do you cut someone up at age 81? That don't seem pretty frail to me. I mean, he looks it and it's a very innocent looking routine, to put that on. But if you can cut up bone and shit, You ain't frail. People lie, and they put on a mask sometimes. You never truly know someone. Gallagher also said that Harvey told him that she was in a satanic cult and that she was a witch and she wished to be a goat. I don't know why anybody would want to be a goat, because goats usually get slaughtered, but okay.
Loss and the gruesome discovery that eventually led to an arrest. Last week, someone discovered a dismembered torso in a garbage bag at the corner of Atlantic and Pennsylvania Avenues. Then Tuesday, a human leg was discovered blocks away on Jamaica Avenue. According to a criminal complaint, surveillance video led officers to Marcelin's apartment nearby. After serving a search warrant inside, police found the victim's decapitated head and saw blades. Marcelin, who identifies as a transgender woman, was released on parole in 2019 after serving decades behind bars for 2 separate killings dating back to 1963 and 1986.
Clearly, Harvey and Susan have some kind of connection. Let me tell you about her. Leyden grew up in the upper middle class Jewish family in Teaneck, New Jersey. She graduated from Teaneck High School in 1972. She was one of the cool kids. Life began to unravel after a series of unfortunate events. She lost her father, 2 brothers, and a sister in rapid order in her early 20s. Her mother, who lives 1,000 miles away in Florida, so she was alone. Her 16-year marriage ended in divorce in 1992, and she was estranged from her only daughter, who is like her only child as well. She managed a business called Jewels and More in Fort Lee, New Jersey for years before closing the shop. She ended up living in Stonewall House, an LGBT-friendly elderly housing development in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. According to Marcelin, she and Susan were in a complicated relationship. Marcelin said that she met Leyden in Tompkins Square Park about 2 years ago, and she was part of her coven. So Marcelin believes that Susan is part of her coven of women. I don't know if that's like a witch thing or a harem thing. I'm probably thinking harem because Marcelin was also involved with 2 other women, and Susan will be the 3rd. Another one named Jillian, and Jillian was actually caught on video at Home Depot on March 1st with Harvey buying the saw that was used to cut up Susan's body. And Jillian is actually participating with the police. She's cooperating because it's damning evidence. And Marcelin is also claiming to have been framed and that Jillian aided in the frame up. In December of 2019, Marcelin got a Facebook and posted a picture of Susan with the caption, "Love personified." So I went to this Facebook page and I found it, and I found the comment, and I screen recorded it. So this is very, very fucking creepy. Marcelin has nothing but pictures of Susan. Only one picture is of Marcelin. It's just weird to have so many pictures of the same person that's not you. And when I was going through, clicking through the different profiles, because Marcelin has several Facebook pages, and so does Susan, but I was able to track them and they look pretty legit. And so you see the love personified. Also in another page, Marcelin posted a picture of a really pretty blonde girl. And in it, when I clicked on it, I saw Susan Leyden had posted, "Harvey Marcelin is a monster and crazy." Now, I cannot confirm if this is exactly her, but it looks like it is, because when I go back and forth and I start clicking on all the pages, it all goes back to all of Marcelin's pages. But Harvey is full of shit. She doesn't like the media's portrayal of Susan. Harvey then goes on to disrespect the victim in that same jailhouse interview, stating that she was no angel and other derogatory things. Harvey said again that he has problems with women and that there are 2 sides to her. Harvey Marcelin, the angry masculine side, this is the bad guy, And then there is the feminine side, Marcelin Harvey. Harvey describes the feminine side as sweet and gentle. I call bullshit. Both sides brutally murdered this woman and discarded her remains like trash. So they both suck. Harvey should have never been released, and this senseless murder could have been prevented. Marcelin has been in prison for nearly 50 years of her life. 1995 incarceration lasted for 35 years, and Marcelin admitted that she said what was needed to get out. Harvey went to 15 parole hearings before being allowed to leave prison on August 7, 2019. In 2010, Harvey was denied parole by the parole board, stating that your release at this time is incompatible with the welfare and safety of the community. So how was Harvey released? The New York Department of Corrections and Community of Supervision said that Marcelin met the criteria for release. Harvey completed therapy and coursework and had letters of support from organizations that work with the release of offenders. Harvey was also deemed unlikely to commit a violent crime. Well, we know that's bullshit, because we wouldn't be talking about this story if that was the case.
And 1986.
They're letting them out very easy out of jail.
People in the Cypress Hills neighborhood can't understand why Marcelin was allowed out on parole. She's now in custody again, charged with disposing of the victim's body.
Wow, that's crazy to let people out like that and sick like that, and they're out here hurting people out here. It's not, we have to do something different with this system.
Someone dropped the ball. Who would advocate for this monster? This monster at the age of 14 attempted to harm an 80-year-old child, attempted to rape a woman, assaulted and killed his ex-girlfriend, Jacqueline Bonds, murdered and dismembered his girlfriend, Anna, and has been in and out of prison for years, and for violent crimes. Then went on to harm another woman. He discarded these women like trash. He has no regard for human life. I understand at the advanced age of 80 that people are less likely to commit crime. But anything is possible. And the worst happened. The worst possible thing happened. Marcelin has the nerve to feign innocence, claiming that Jillian helped set him up. Well, her up, sorry. And that his history and rap sheet make him an easy target for a setup. Well, how about you buying a saw on video at Home Depot? Those blades being bloody. You bought the saw. You were seen with her bag that her torso was found in. That's a mighty good frame up if that's the case. Marcelin was arrested on March 4th, 2020, and charged with capital murder, concealment of a human corpse, dismembering a third, tampering with evidence. Hopefully Harvey will never get out of jail. Rot in jail for the rest of your life. I mean, you're already 80, so there's probably not going to be much left of it. So, an update. Remember when I told you about that women's homeless facility worker who didn't like Marcelin and didn't want her working there? Well, her name is Monica Archer. And on Monday, December 5th, she filed a lawsuit against the facility. So Monica Archer is an ex-caseworker at the Manhattan Senior Shelter. She claimed she was fired for warning that the two-time convicted murderer threatened her at the facility. This facility is called the George Daly House, and it's a short-term housing alternative for seniors. The bosses of this nonprofit moved Marcelin into her own apartment, and 1 week later, she was charged with murdering Leyden. Archer and other staff kept a gun on the facility. According to the 16-page lawsuit filed by Archer, she claims that Marcelin followed her home on several occasions and that she had to take alternate routes. She also claimed that Marcelin possessed a firearm, which I don't know about the state of New York, but in California and in most other states, Felons are not allowed to own guns, especially if they're recently released like Marcelin was. Archer also suggested to her bosses that this was not the place for Marcelin, and she suggested a more supportive housing, like substance abuse places and also places for people who suffer from mental health issues. They did not listen to Archer's warnings, and look what happened. Also, Archer claims that she was fired for insubordination, even though there were no written or verbal complaints issued to her. She believed that they fired her in retaliation for her complaining to OSHA. Before she was fired, she was placed on janitorial duty, and they refused to let her work from home. On May 24th, 2022, she was suspended without pay, and 1 week later was fired for insubordination. All this happened 2 months after Harvey was charged, after she warned them to never let him in there. This reminds me of Brenda Cleveland. Remember that lady on Dahmer that nobody listened to? And all the neighbors were talking about how there was this deathly odor emanating from his apartment, and no one did anything. Not the police, no one. And then we find out later that not only was he killing people, he was eating motherfuckers. So this is why people need to listen and be cautious. And it just makes me so fucking sick, and it makes me mad because this could have been prevented.